Minister Seanad on the 22nd of October 2014 and the Dáil on the 10th of December 2014 adopted motions calling on the Government to recognise the State of Palestine. A wave of EU parliaments, such as the UK, France and Spain, have passed similar motions, in most cases situating recognition as part of an overall approach to the Middle East peace process. In May 2015, the Vatican concluded its first treaty that formally recognised the State of Palestine with an agreement on church activities in areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority. After this House and then later the Dáil passed those motions last year, Minister Flanagan stated in the Dáil that he is open to early recognition if, in his words, if it would be helpful. And he said he would reflect on this question, including by engaging in a reflection at EU level on the EU's overall approach to the issue, to the Middle East process, which has been initiated by High Representative Mogherini. Minister Flanagan has also stated previously that a move towards recognition will help to jumpstart a peace process that has stalled. However, a year on, Minister, I'm very disappointed that the Irish Government has not acted on the recommendation of the Seanad and the Dáil. The latest direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians broke down in March 2014, and there is no expectation now of resumption in the foreseeable future. At the present moment, therefore, there is effectively no political process or peace process in being. Indeed, the latest Israeli government, formed by Prime Minister Netanyahu in May, is a coalition of nationalist and religious parties, most members of which are openly hostile to the establishment of a Palestinian state and support ongoing expansion of illegal settlements. On the Palestinian side, the Palestinian factions are fragmented, the West Bank and Gaza are disconnected, and there are serious issues there of leadership and legitimacy. Minister Flanagan appears to be waiting for a broader EU consensus to grow on the issue of recognition of Palestine. However, one-third of the EU already recognises Palestine, with the Swedes being the most recent to have done so last year. And given the division amongst EU states on this issue, consensus is unlikely in the short term. Recognition is a member state competency. It's not one that's reserved to the EU. And I believe it would be a progressive measure that Ireland could take without requiring consensus at EU level. And I think it's very clear, Minister, now a full year on since those motions were passed by the Oireachtas, that it is time for Ireland to follow the example of Sweden and recognise Palestine without further delay. So I've tabled this debate to draw your attention to that, and particularly to the fact that almost a year has passed since the motion, over a year since it was passed by the Senate, and almost a year since it was passed by the Dáil, and to ask you if Ireland will now move to recognise Palestine without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Power. And the Minister regrets that he cannot be in attendance here this morning and wishes to convey his apologies to Senator Power for not being present. The achievement of a sovereign Palestinian state, recognised not just by Ireland but by everyone, including Israel, has been a major foreign policy objective of the government since it took office. It is something we seek to achieve in reality, not just in words, and all of the government's actions in relation to the Middle East conflict are directed to that end. Only a two-state solution, with a Palestinian state existing alongside and in peace with Israel, can satisfy the need of both peoples for security and prosperity. Last year, the Seanad on the 22nd of October and the Dáil on the 10th of December passed motions calling on the government to recognise Palestine and to help achieve a two-state solution. The government did not oppose or seek to amend these motions, which were calling for something which we were already working for. There were similar motions in other European parliaments, prompted by the decision of Sweden in October to recognise Palestine. In Ireland, as in most countries, recognition of sovereign states is a matter for decision by the government. The views of the Oireachtas are, of course, a very important factor in that consideration, but it remains for the government and, in the first instance, the Minister to consider if this is an appropriate step, and if so, when it might be best to take it. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade and other ministers spoke in the Dáil debate on the 9th and 10th of December, setting out in detail the government's view on this issue. Minister Flanagan made clear that while successive governments had always seen recognition as part of an overall peace agreement, he had no difficulty with early recognition by Ireland if he felt that this could be helpful to the situation now, that is, to the effort to reach such a peace agreement. The statements in that debate also set out in more detail than I can today the many and various factors which the Minister would be weighing in making that consideration. We all know that recognition by Ireland will not of itself bring a Palestinian state into being, but we need to consider not just the positive symbolic significance recognition might have for Palestinians, but also what effect it might have on the Israel side. While we seek to influence and persuade, we must also consider how it might affect Ireland's influence and voice on the issue, both in the region and international discussions, particularly at EU level, and any impact it might have on Ireland's ability to continue our work on the ground. There are potential downsides to be considered as well as gains. In terms of timing, clearly some events in the last year would have weighed on consideration as regards when might be the right moment for a decision on recognition. These include the lengthy elections and coalition-building process in Israel in the first half of the year, the continuing debate in the EU and Middle East policy, and latterly the upsurge of violence in Jerusalem and elsewhere. During that period also, Minister Flanagan has visited Israel and the Palestinian territory and has discussed the recognition question with some EU colleagues and with the Palestinian Foreign Minister. It is also worth noting that no further EU partner has followed Sweden and recognised Palestine. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade is continuing to consider the question of early recognition by Ireland of the State of Palestine.
Thank you, Minister. Question, Senator?
Thank you. I thank Minister Doonahan for his reply, and I appreciate that you will bring this issue to the attention of Minister Flanagan. I suppose I want to stress that obviously recognition by itself can't end the occupation. Only Israel can do that. I do appreciate that. But I do think that Ireland recognising Palestine would be of enormous symbolic significance. After this House passed a motion last year, which I had initiated, I was invited to speak at a UN conference on Palestine in New York. And at that, there was a very warm welcome from the country about the fact that we had taken this step and the sense that it would be positive and helpful if more countries did so. I know you've pointed out that Sweden has been the only EU state to have done so in the last 12 to 18 months, but indeed a third of the EU already recognise Palestine, so there is a significant group. Ireland, throughout our history, has a proud tradition of standing out and not just following the herd and waiting for common consensus. We've actually, on issues of human rights and international justice, we have proudly stood out and led the way, and I think this is another area where we need to do that. And recognising, as Trogra has pointed out, recognition of Palestine would be anti-occupation, not anti-Israel. Ireland already recognised the State of Israel, and recognising Palestine would help to create a parity of status, which I think could only be helpful in getting the peace process off the ground and indeed jump-starting it, as Minister Charlie Flanagan said was necessary a year ago. So I just ask you just to bring those remarks to his attention, and perhaps you might ask him if he could correspond with me directly as well after he's had a chance to consider the issue again. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Power, and congratulations on being invited to the UN to speak on this issue as well. Both the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Government are quite willing to move on early recognition of Palestine if it is concluded that it can be helpful and if now is the right time. And that commitment alone is significant and sends out a very clear message of support for a Palestinian state. Ministers made this very clear in the debate in the Dáil last year, as well as the factors which would guide that consideration. I know my colleague Minister Flanagan is continuing to carefully consider this question, and I would be happy to advise him of the arguments advanced by the Senator here today, and also I would advise the Senator to write directly to Minister Flanagan, who has a special interest in this area. I know from speaking to him, and obviously because of his travels to Palestine and Israel, he has a very good understanding of what's happening on the ground. He has seen it as first hand. So this is an area that he has a particular interest in, and I'm convinced when it's appropriate that he will make that very, very vital decision of recognition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. The House stands suspended until 11:30.